Hello, welcome back to A Spiritual Ascension, my own 5-year journey, where I'm telling my entire 5-year ascension journey from start to finish and everything that kind of happened before, and then I'll get into what has happened since. And if you're just coming into this now, please go back to the first episode one. It's the introduction video. If you kind of just jump into this now, as I'm going into chronological order, you're going to kind of get lost in a mix there. Um, so if you are following along, in the last video, I landed on a very edge east of New Jersey in the town where I had actually raised my children. And again, I was only going by, like, when I was looking for a hotel, it was like the cheapest hotel I could find. But it was weird um, how the hotels I was going to, like the town that they were in meant something. And Um, I had lived there for 10 years. 10 years, yeah. I think exactly 10 years. And my kids had gone through high school and graduated there. As soon as my son, who had passed away, had graduated, he had gone and done his um, junior year, not junior year, I'm sorry, freshman year, um, in a local college in the state of New Jersey. And then that's when I had moved to Manhattan. So I took the train at night. I had just enough money to get my train ticket. And my friend who had been helping me along, um, ended up sending me, I don't know, like $25 or whatever. So when I got into the city, if I needed something to eat, it was probably around 10 o'clock when I arrived in Penn Station. And like, I had, when I first started working on Wall Street, I had still been um, in living in New Jersey. So I was used to taking the train back and forth every day. So that was nothing new. So like arriving in Penn Station this time, and it would be my last time, was like really like weird in a way. Also, we're talking about now 2023, right? Yeah, 2023. Um, I had been on this journey now for exactly 3 years. And when I had left New York in 2020, just as the pandemic was starting, New York City had changed in so rapidly. Like there seemed to be, um, I don't know, I guess because of the pandemic and so many people had passed away during that time in New York City, it was like an epicenter for a lot of cases. And like coming back there for the first time was like really weird. And so anyway, thought I know that trains usually will go in and out until like around 2 o'clock. And this was 2 o'clock in the morning. And this was, what night was this? This was a Wednesday night when this happened. So I'd already been on the road traveling now for a week and a half by foot, you know? And I also wanted to mention to you guys that I want you to know that this wasn't only about me um, doing this traveling, but what I've talked about in many of my videos about spiritual navigation, that you're getting this intense connection with the divine and you're allowing yourself to be led. So, like these little indications of um, where to go. And, I guess the divine is on the internet, because when it was time for me to look for a hotel, I was only thinking about the price. But you see how the divine was leading me in a certain direction. Now, my main focus now is I have to, like my father had told me years back, you're to go to the New Hampshire, Maine border. Didn't know how I was going to get there. I had no money at that point. Did not know, even be able to conceive how I eventually was going to be able to get there. Um, so I just want you to think about that too, like wherever you feel like you're supposed to be, or your intuition is telling you that where you may end up being, um, that we who have chosen this path, we've already chosen, before we even came here in this lifetime, of what path we were going to take and where we were going to end up. Anyway, getting back to arriving in Manhattan now around 10 o'clock at night. I know there's Manhattan like the back of my hand. I had, you know, lived there and I had worked there for almost 20 years. And it's different when you're walking the streets of Manhattan as a person who has a home to go to at night. And um, versus, and then also passing by people on the street who are homeless. And like I know occasionally I would help people out with money or on the subway or something like that if they, were asking for food, money for food or something like that. Um, but being now on the other side of the fence and saying, this feels so weird, because I know people are recognizing that I have nowhere to go. And I didn't know where to go. For me to have lived in New York City for so long, and I always had a destination. I get on the subway, I go here, I get on the subway again and I go home. Now to arrive in New York City and I don't know where to go. I don't have a destination. Um, I found a coffee shop, like a donut shop, and I thought they were going to be open because a lot of things in Manhattan are open 24/7. And things had changed also since the pandemic, where things that used to be open 24 hours were now shutting down at a certain time, because they weren't having the foot traffic like they used to have before then. So found this donut shop and I figured, oh, this, perfect. I can sit here for a couple hours or whatever. It's open 24 hours. They were getting a delivery that night, and the guy stayed open. I didn't know they were going to close early, but the guy kind of stayed open a little bit later to allow for the delivery. Then after the delivery, he's like, "Oh, I got to close now." And I'm like, "Oh, you do?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I'm like, "Oh." So now it's probably after 11 going on midnight, and I don't know where to go. Again, too, I had been walking on my feet for a few hours already, and I ended up walking over towards down 34th Street, I think, towards the Hudson River. So if you're familiar with New York, Manhattan, I should say, where Penn Station is, 34th Street crosses by Penn Station. And I just kind of started walking on 34th Street down towards the Hudson River. That's where, oh, why can't I think? There's a big, I can't think. I should kind of look up these things before I start talking, right? I know my father used to take us to go, there was car shows there. So you probably know where, if you're familiar with New York, down 34th Street, almost to the river. Can't think of the venue. The name is totally, but they have big events there. Like mostly like shows, like so like car shows and things on that order. My father used to take us as a family when we were younger, my brother-in-laws and stuff like that. And that was always like really interesting to see the new cars coming in. Um, Now I'm getting mad. I have to look it up. I'm sorry. Won't come to me. Where do they have the car shows in Manhattan every year? Jacob Javits Center. Okay. Everybody's probably, I know you guys are probably yelling at me. Jacob Javits Center. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I walked down towards there and I just had no destination. Um, and I ended up in this like little park. I didn't even know it was there. And I saw some other people like sitting on benches, and a couple of guys were like drinking and got a little bit rowdy. So I kind of walked to the other end, and there was just a few people like kind of sitting. It was mostly men. And I figure, okay, well, maybe I can sit here and just sit, because my at this point, I don't know if you realize, but the reason why we are meant, this thing is poking me here. The reason why we're meant to lay down is for our blood circulation, right, at night. Um, and because I had been sitting up for a few days, I also was not drinking a lot of water, taking in a lot of fluids, because I never knew when I was going to need to use the restroom again. And I didn't know where there would be a restroom. I remember in the very beginning, I was hardly drinking any liquids, just fear of like, I don't know where I'm going to be or if I'm going to be on the street that night. And not to get graphic or anything, but your urine turns very, very dark color. And I know if once you're dehydrated, even blood could show up in your urine. And I think that was a possibility with me now that I'm reflecting back. But my ankles had started to swell up because I wasn't getting sleep, the sleep I needed at night, and constantly on my feet. And I didn't have supportive shoes on either, like sneakers. I didn't think that out too well when I had left the house that day. Um, so I sat on the bench and I kind of see people starting to kind of look at me, and I was trying to be as inconspicuous, however you say that word, as possible. And just kind of blend in. But it's kind of like people on the street kind of know if you belong there or not. And it didn't feel comfortable after a while. I knew I was protected. That's another thing I always say to you guys, that whatever circumstances, whatever your journey is going to be, and I know it's going to be totally different than mine, just know that whatever you go through, you're always protected. Okay. Um, Anyway, I ended up just walking around all night long because I didn't want to sit in one place. And that's a good thing about Manhattan is there's always people on the street. And by about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I ended up in Bryant Park. So if you know where the public library is on 42nd Street there, in the back, they have like some chairs and tables in Bryant Park. And I ended up going and sitting there, and there's a bunch of kind of other homeless people sitting there too. And nobody really bothered anyone else. And I was just so happy to have somewhere to kind of sit that felt a little bit secure. So I ended up sitting there for probably maybe almost 4 hours. And then my friend, he knew I had come into the city that night, and he had contacted me, I don't know, around 8 o'clock in the morning, 8, 9. And he said, okay, he said, come to Brooklyn. And that's where he was located. And again, I hadn't seen him since that one time in April when I had gone out to meet up with him, and we had had dinner together. And so this was my first time, like him seeing me in the condition now that I had been in over this past week and a half. So now this is Thursday morning. It's over a week and a half that I've been kind of doing this traveling. And so he told me, he said, come to Brooklyn, and he would figure something out. So I ended up taking the train to Brooklyn, and I'll go more into that on the next video. But again, thank you so much for being here. And I also wanted to just say too that this whole time that you're on your journey, this is the time where like the universe, the universe is really working on you, you know. Everything that you once feared is kind of coming at you. Like, who could ever imagine? I could never imagine. Like, here I was, I worked on Wall Street at one of the most, prestigious um, companies, finance companies in the world, and wore suits and heels every day to work, and um, was looked up to, in my profession. And here I was now, homeless and walking on the streets of New York with nowhere to go, no money in my pocket, where before I was making six figures. And just to really put that, put that in my mind to say, like, how did I get here and why is this happening? And what is the meaning of all this? And I still didn't know at that point or truly understand what I was going through. All I knew is I had to get to that New Hampshire Maine border at all costs. I didn't know what was going to be there when I got there. But this whole thing was about getting rid of my past and moving eventually into this new life. And I still didn't know how much longer it was going to take me to get to where I needed to be. All right. So thank you again for being here and listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next one.